Welcome to the Dealing with Goliath podcast. The mission of Dealing with Goliath is to sharpen the psychological edge in negotiation and high-impact conversations for business leaders with skin in the game who want to be more effective under pressure, uncover hidden value, and build greater connection, all while increasing profitability. With expert guests across the business spectrum, we deliver gems of wisdom, delving into their methods, their thinking and approach to business, life, and to problem solving. This is the Grande Cup of Insight, long-form podcast interview where we take the time to delve a little bit more into our guests' experiences, stories, and to get those priceless nuggets. I'm your host, Al McBride, and my guest today is Judy Hoberman. Hi, Judy. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Judy Hoberman is the president of Judy Hoberman and Associates, a company focused on empowering professional women. She's an award-winning international speaker, best-selling author, trainer, and leading authority on women in leadership. With over 3 decades in business, she combines wisdom and humor with her behavior-shaping insights, impacting audiences of thousands, as well as small groups and individuals through her one-to-one executive coaching and mentoring. And she is often described as transformational. Men and women lead, sell, manage, and recruit differently. And Judy is the master at improving performance and company culture, empowering both genders to better support each other's success in more productive ways. Judy also works with companies supporting their diversity and women's initiatives in the areas of leadership, recruiting, training, coaching, mentoring, and retention. She was a TEDx speaker talking about prejudging people. She's the author of 4 books, including Selling in a Skirt and Walking on the Glass Floor. She offers a training program that concentrates on women in leadership and men who champion them, with emphasis on redefining culture. And Judy's mission is to help one woman a day by following an important philosophy. Women want to be treated equally, not identically. So it's a lot of fascinating stuff to dive into there, Judy. So let's start there. Let's start. Men and women lead, sell, manage, and recruit differently. So tell us more about that. What are some of those key differences?
Well, I'm going to make a profound statement that men and women are different. I mean, that's the truth. You have to go from that point forward. Everything we do is different, not better, worse, right or wrong, just different. And I believe if you would, if people just take the time to listen to what you're saying and what you're receiving, it would change the whole conversation. Because a lot of times we go in, talk about recruiting. If I'm going in for a job and you're the recruiter, you need to listen to the things that I'm asking because I'm asking for a reason, but I also need to listen to the questions you're asking because you're asking for a reason. So, some of the things are like men are much more interested in the amount of money they're going to make and the advancement right away. Women are as well, but they're also looking for a different kind of home, not a home like they live in, but someplace where they feel comfortable, someplace that they don't dread going into. So that's just, it's like just a little piece of the puzzle, but that's what it is. It's all about differences. And really, we are different. But if you take the differences and make them into assets rather than liabilities, it's a whole different ballgame.
That's very interesting. Is it the order effect? Is it so? Because I would imagine men also want to know if they're a good fit for this work environment and this work culture. But as you said, an awful lot of men maybe have the order the other way around. Is that kind of the main thing, that we want the same things but just slightly different priority?
That's, it's a good way of looking at it. It really is. You can think about it also in the sales process. In the sales process, women have to have a relationship with their salesperson. It doesn't mean that they have to love them, but they have to, know, like, trust, which is something we were taught when we were little, and it doesn't change. We need that relationship first, and then we can go forward with the transaction. Men do the transaction first, and then they'll start to build the relationship. So it is an order, and I guess that's the best way to think about it. We do want the same things. And as we go further away from like the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, where everything was, so male dominated, as opposed to now we're getting more women into the positions that, that they weren't invited to before. There are more men that want to be home with their kids. There are more men that want to take paternity leave. There are more men that want to have the relationship. So it is changing. It just isn't changing as quickly as we'd like, but it is changing.
Well, that's very positive to hear. That, as you said, because some of the things you were talking about were, I mean, n equals one. I am, a pool group of one. But just when you were saying, about wanting to know, like, and trust, that's very big for me and for an awful lot of business owners that I know. So it's very interesting to hear that a lot of men don't particularly have that. Although I do work in an industry where most of my colleagues and bosses have been women, so I'm very used to that. Maybe maybe
That's a
it,
good thing because it's different. It's just different. When
exactly.
I was trained and when I went into financial services, I was trained, there were only men there. I was the only female. I was trained to go in, get out, and get the check. That was it. It wasn't have a conversation, build rapport. It wasn't that. It was get in, get out, and get the check. And that was it. And I kept saying, this is not who I am. I don't do that. I would never get on the phone with somebody and ask them, a barrage of questions all about how much money they have and the last time they were sick and the medication that they're on. I would never answer that if somebody asked me that. If I didn't know them, why would I? And so that was the same thing. I had to go and, I was always like one step forward, 10 steps backwards, because I would say, I can't do it that way. It doesn't work for me. And then when I would come in with all these sales, they would say, well, how did you do that if you didn't just get in, get out, and get the check? And so it did change.
It did, yeah. It's fascinating. Do you find there's, you mentioned, company culture. Is there also an element of geographical culture or national culture as well? Have you found that even just East Coast, West Coast, and various areas in between have very different cultures, or is it just company by company?
Let's just say I come from the Northeast. I live in the South now. And when I first came here, people would be like, oh my God, you're like right in my face. I'm like, no, I'm just very black and white. You know where you stand. You never have to guess. If I love you, I love you. If I don't, I'll still respect you, but I may not like you. So, it's very different. It's very, very different. And people, you can pick out, like I'm from New York originally, so you can pick out New Yorkers. They don't have to speak or anything. You just know who they are. And that's just something the same way that my husband is a Texan and he knows it's the same thing, not as pronounced, but but it is, culture is culture. It's the funniest thing. And when people say something, you're like, did you really say that out loud? And those are not the New Yorkers.
Absolutely. I spent 6 wonderful weeks in New York a long time ago, and I was amazed. I wouldn't say New Yorkers are friendly, might not be the right word, but I found them amazingly engaging and refreshing and direct. It was a
And
breath of fresh
loyal.
air. Was
And
that?
loyal.
And
Loyal.
loyal. Okay, okay, that's a good one. Yeah, I suppose they were. Yeah, good point. Good point. Fascinating stuff. This is excellent. So you've had, as you said, a 30-year career, and you've noticed an awful lot of developments and changes over the years. What have been some of the bigger struggles you've had to overcome, and some of the lessons that came from those struggles?
Well, being the only woman in a lot of the years, that's a big struggle. And it's not that it's too hard to do, because I would have gotten out if it was too hard to do. It's just that you were always fighting that uphill battle, always. And you were always trying to prove yourself, and you were always having to do more. And that's not to say that the men were not kind and interested. They just were never trained the same way that I needed training. And a lot of the, go back to sales, a lot of the sales training were developed by men for men. And so here you bring this woman in who says, well, I need to build a relationship. They would always say to me, you're such a girl. You have to make friends with everybody. You ask too many questions and your appointments are way too long. And I kept hearing, well, that's a relationship. That's how you do it. And so if I would take a long time, when I would come back, my manager would say, did you sell? It was a yes or no question. And I wanted to give him the reason. And he would say, it's a yes or no question. Did you sell or not? And I would say, no, and not no, but no,
Right.
and I'm going back tomorrow to pick up the check. But he would never let me get to that and part. So that was a big challenge for me. And so I would just, send people notes, send my manager a note, say, I didn't sell it today, but I'm picking up the check tomorrow. So he would know, and he wouldn't ask me. I was also very challenged with how they would motivate me. Two different things. The first thing is I would have somebody call me at 6 a.m. every morning when I first started and say, how many appointments do you have? And I would say, it's 6 in the morning. Like, why are you calling me? Well, because John has 14. And that's how they thought they would motivate me. I stopped picking up the phone after a while because I got that. But the other thing was every Monday you'd have a sales meeting, and every Monday you would win something. And I won every sales meeting, every single one. I won because I was a single mom with kids and I had to do well. But I won, tackle boxes, fishing poles, coolers, you name it, I won them. And so my kids would say, what'd you get today, Mom? And so years later, when I had another regional director, he would say to me, what would you like if you were going to win something? No one ever asked me that before. And I'd say, I don't really know. I don't know if it makes a difference, but it sure would be nice that, it would be something that I could use. And he bought me a diamond bracelet because I was like the top. And I thought, whoa, this was great. Nobody ever asked me before. So when I had my own agencies, I always asked questions. I always said, what drives you? Where do you see yourself? What's 3 things I can expect from you? And what 3 things can you expect from me? And so it was that kind of thing that you started to build these relationships. It was a struggle in the beginning because I didn't know what I was doing. They would throw a brochure at me and say, go out and sell. I'm like, what? What am I selling?
But again, it seems like you were ahead of the curve and you're on the right side of history. So much these days is about authentic selling and selling with integrity, or heart-based selling, as a mutual friend of ours calls it. And, it seems to be very much more accepted, much more the norm. Or is it the norm? Am I just in a bubble and it seems the norm, or has it become?
It's more the norm than it ever was. It's not from everybody, because you still hear people that say, do you want this? Here's how much it is. Give me a check. Basically, that's it. Get in, get out, get the check. But there are more people that are actually becoming more interested. I always tell people you have to be interested in your clients, not interesting to them. They don't care who you are, not yet. Exactly. You don't have that relationship yet. But if you're interested in them and you can build that relationship, you will eventually become interesting to them as well.
Fascinating stuff. Oddly, you remind me of a guy I met in Japan. I was there a few years ago, and he was telling me the reason the Japanese tend to go out and get very, very drunk with their business contacts is exactly what you're talking about, weirdly enough. Now, it's a very masculine approach, but it's that you can't hold the mask up long enough, particularly over hours of socializing and alcohol.
Right.
Again, maybe not the healthiest approach, but it's to the same point that if I phone you in New York or in London or wherever you are, that you go, oh, I remember you from Tokyo. Yes, I'll take your call. That I'm not just another account to you. That there's a personal connection. So it's just a very, very masculine, macho way of getting to a similar point. So as you say, we all seem to be coalescing to a similar point, hopefully. Yeah. So tell me, because as I said, you've been on this fantastic journey. You've been huge struggles, I'd imagine, but also huge successes along the way. So tell me, what is it you currently love about your work?
So I have to go back again and say, because I was the only woman and because I had to create my own playbook, it worked for me. When I got to have my own agencies and everything, I was recruited into a corporate position. It was the first time ever that I had gotten a paycheck, because I was always 100% commission. So that was like a novel idea. Like in my, look at my checking account every other week, there's money deposited there, and it's like a lot of money. I'm like, okay, this sounds pretty good, except for the fact that the culture was toxic. And so no money is worth it, because I was physically getting ill. So when I went out on my own after, making this big decision, because again, I'm jumping out, I'm not married. It's not like I have somebody else's income to protect me or whatever, nothing like that. I just was jumping because I was afraid I wasn't gonna survive. And I remember thinking, if I was starting all over right this minute, what would I have wanted? And I would have wanted somebody that looked like me, not look like me, but somebody that was in the same kind of position, a female that could have said to me, look, there's going to be a major detour and a speed bump, just veer to the left. Don't do it for me, just tell me what to do. And nobody was there. So I became that person. I became who I wanted. And by doing that, I attracted a lot of women who were in that position. They may not have been the only woman on their team or the only woman in the industry, not that, but they were still new and scared and didn't have the ability to have a safe corner, a safe space to talk to somebody. So I became that person. I started doing executive coaching. I started doing keynote speaking. I started doing lots of training, and I became that person. So what I love about it the most is when somebody says to me, I was ready to quit, and I listened to your story and I didn't. And now look where I am. And you don't get that. It's not like you go into this thinking, oh, I can't wait to get that story, because it doesn't happen like that. Out of nowhere, you get a message from somebody that says, thank you, because of you. And so that's what I love about it. I love to see somebody get it. I love to see somebody just be a sponge and listen. It's very difficult when somebody says, yeah, I tried everything. Yeah, that doesn't work. Yep, that's not going to be good. Yep, and people do that all the time. And you just say, okay, well, if you've tried everything, that's great. And I'm probably not the right person for you. But when they just, even if they listen to one little thing, just one thing, it could change everything. Really, honestly, it could change everything. And that's why I love what I do.
It's fabulous. As I said, it's where you can see that real difference in at one of those fork points in people's lives where they were otherwise potentially going one direction. And then, as you said, from your intervention, whether it was literal intervention one-to-one, or whether it was, as you say, seeing or reading your book or something along those lines, you see them now in a new trajectory. It's hugely fulfilling. Yeah. Very much, very much. On that note, I had a look at your TED Talk, and it was a very good one. As you said, a nice level of humor in it and great stories. What made you pick that theme, that idea? Because I'm sure, again, there were a lot of things that you could have done. So even just explain to the listeners in a very quick overview what the gist of it was, what the outline. But
well, first of all, you have to remember that TED has very strict rules and regulations. They do. Okay, so one of the hardest things for me is you have to stand in this red circle, because part of it is they have to video you. And so I like to walk and talk with my hands and all of that. Remember, I'm from the Northeast, so this is part of me. You can't do that. But they also give you a theme, and the theme was outside the lines. And the very first time I had tried to get onto TED, I wasn't accepted. And I thought, okay, that's good. And I don't even remember what the theme was, but I wasn't supposed to be there. But when this one came up, I thought, well, this is interesting. I'll try it again. When they accepted me, that's when I started to say, oh my God, like, what did I do? Because it's a very humbling experience. It doesn't matter if you're a keynote speaker for years. It doesn't matter. It's a different kind of thing. And plus, I was going to tell a story that I had never told before out loud. And I don't know why I chose to do that. I can't even tell you. But I do remember I could not get through. TED asks you to be done by 18 minutes, but they really like the 15-minute mark somewhere over there. And I couldn't get through the first 3 minutes at all. And so I kept, trying to decide, how am I going to do this? So maybe I won't tell the story or whatever. But I ended up changing the pronoun. So instead of it being me, I talked about somebody that I knew, and it was easier. But it was a very powerful story. And the reason I say powerful is because in the audience, there were a bunch of students, high school students, that were invited. And all the young girls came up to me, because I talked about being prejudged. They all came up and they said, oh my God, I get prejudged every single day. What should I do? So, you're sharing a message that's bigger than yourself. And then there are people there. I mean, as I was telling it, I could hear people going in the audience, and I'm trying to really be focused. But here's the funny part. Before I decided to do this, or right before the dress rehearsal, I was very snarky to everybody, my whole family. I was very snarky. I was scared to death. And so I apologized publicly to everyone beforehand. I said, if I'm snarky, it's just because I'm scared. But a friend of mine does neuralistic programming. And she said to me, okay, before you do anything, let's just talk a little bit about what's happening to you. And she said, when you hear a TED Talk, what's the very first thing you hear? And I said, applause, because every single one that you turn on, the first thing you hear is applause. She said, okay. She said, what color calms you down? I said, purple. She said, all right, what are you afraid of? I said, I'm afraid I won't be able to tie the theme together. And she said, okay, are you going to wear anything that means something to you? And I said, yes, my wedding ring. She said, okay. So before you get on the stage, close your eyes, hear the applause, see the purple, know you're not going to forget anything, and turn your ring. And so I did. And I thought, well, this is, voodoo nonsense. It doesn't work, but I'm going to try it anyway. And it does work. And so I get on stage and I'm good. I'm good. And I could feel, like in the first 5 minutes, I could feel it starting to come up, and I turned my ring again. And my husband, who was sitting in the front row, and you can't see anybody. So it's not like, I said to him, don't sit any place I can see you, because I know I'll cry. I couldn't see him anyway. But at that moment, when I turned my ring, he took a picture. He didn't know what it meant, but it actually meant that I was releasing the whole thing.
Mm. It was quite a touching touching video. No, and it'll be, linked beneath the podcast here, called "The Greatest Missed Opportunity." It's well worth a look.
Thanks.
So thank you for that. Yes. So tell us along those lines, so that when people say, people look at me and that I'm prejudged and they expect certain things of me, good or bad. Mm-hmm. What would you say in response to them? So take those high school girls, for example, or, someone starting out in business or working in one of maybe their first job what would you say to them? So
if you're the one that's doing the prejudging, you have to actually stop, because your mind will prejudge somebody in, less than a nanosecond. It just does. Mm-hmm. And you have to really correct yourself from doing it. And, we all do it. We all do it. And then we step back and go, I wonder why I just did that. Because it's the way they look. It's the first thing that you see. And that's the first thing that you judge people on, whether they're attractive or not, short or not, heavy or not. It doesn't matter. And if you're wearing something that means you come from another country, everybody prejudges somebody, everybody. Now, so if you're the one that's doing the prejudging, you really have to stop and say, why would I even think that so quickly? Okay. And it probably isn't your fault, because your mind is doing it. But you have to say, well, I'm not going to follow that. I'm going to just judge this person as a person. If you're the one that's being prejudged, you have to say to them, like, why would you say that? Why do you think that about me? I do. I ask people, because people still prejudge me. They go, oh my God, look at you. You're all put together. I'm like, why would you say that? You have no idea who I am. You don't. You have no idea who I am. Or they'll say something about your business. Like somebody said to me, they met me. They didn't even meet me. They met me on LinkedIn, and they asked me to connect with them. In a minute, I got this whole long email saying, I work with other coaches just like you, and I'm going to create a website that you'll be proud of. Okay, I don't know you. I didn't ask for your help. You didn't look at my website, but you're telling me already that what I'm doing is stupid. And I said, why would you say that? You don't even know who I am. That's what I'm saying. You have to be able to, and you don't have to be 100% defensive, but you're going to be defensive. So just take a deep breath and say, why would you think that? Why would you say that to me? Because if you don't say anything, then you're just going along with the same thing like everybody else. Oh, they're going to prejudge me anyway. And because I still do it. I say, okay, maybe I shouldn't wear this because then they're going to think of this. But I ask now, like, why would you say that? Tell me what made you think of that about me? And they'll say, well, just look at you, or because you're so, standoffish. No, I'm not standoffish. I'm an introvert. So that's what happens as an introvert. I don't walk into a room and go, hey, I don't. If I talk to one-on-one, I'm good. But if I walk in and I don't know anybody, I try to find somebody that looks like they're as lonely as I am, or I wait or now what I do is I show up early. So people walk up to me and they go, hey, how are you? I'm like, I'm great. How are you? There's a hack right there. It's an icebreaker, or I wear cool boots. People comment on my boots because it's an icebreaker. So there's ways you can do it without being defensive, but I always want to know why did you think about what made you say that about me?
And is it just the act of asking that it makes them stop and think, yeah, why did I say that? Rather than actually feeling that you were being defensive, they actually get curious. I mean,
sometimes they get curious.
Right. I would say, don't get mad or sad, get curious. I mean, it's easier said than done, because it's you have this reaction. But then to go, oh yeah, why did I do that? Or why did they do that? So it's a better.
It's a coachable moment.
It's a coachable moment.
And sometimes you have to say, are you okay if I coach you right this moment? Because I really do believe you need this.
Yes, and you have to ask permission first. Yes, exactly. So Tell us, what might be one of the more common myths or misunderstandings about your field of work? So I don't know if you want to talk about maybe being more inclusive in the workspace, or if you want to talk about sales or leadership. I'm not sure what jumps to mind, but what are some of those critical misunderstandings or common myths? I mean, I know we've touched on quite a few already, but so I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Well, I get two. One is when I talk about selling in a skirt, they go, we don't wear skirts. And they're trying to be funny, but I'll say it has nothing to do with the article of clothing. And they go, it doesn't. And then the conversation starts. That's usually what happens when I'm talking to, a man that I don't know. And the other one is, oh, so you're for women. You don't like men. Just because I'm for women doesn't mean I'm against men. It means that I'm looking for the men that are champion women, and I encourage them to come forward. So when I'm doing something on leadership, they go, well, do you have something for men as well? I'm like, they can come into this course as well. It's not just for women only, because men and women should know how to lead together or work together or sell together or buy from each other. Men and women should know that. So that's usually the biggest one I get is, oh, so you're only about women. No.
And just out of interest, from a purely selfish point of view, when men do come onto your course, what are some of the more common aha moments or light bulb moments that they have?
A lot of it is about communication.
Okay.
A lot of it is. And especially when, if you were the type of person that would, segment your population of clients or potential clients between male and female or generations or whatever, that would be different. But we don't do that. And so, unless you have no female clients, you wouldn't want to hear what I had to say. Maybe. I don't know. But most of us have at least a female client. Wouldn't you want to know what she's thinking? Wouldn't you want to know what would be a good way to build rapport? Wouldn't you want to know why she's doing what she's doing? It's those kind of things. And they're like, because a lot of times men will say to me, why didn't we ever learn this before? That's the biggest thing I do get at the end. Like, well, why is this being hidden from us? I'm like, I have no idea, but it's not now. It's right here. I will do a training for the same university every single year. And she always says to me, don't change anything. I'm like, I know, but I have to, make it more current. Nope, don't change anything. It's such a great course. And it's always standing room only. And there's a lot of men in it. And then they'll come up at the end and go, thank you so much. We had never taught about, like soft skills or EQ or anything like that. We just don't get that. I'm like, I don't know why you don't, but it's here. It is here. And then, they all buy my book. I'm not even selling the book. They buy the book, because when you do private trainings or keynotes or whatever, you don't sell anything. You're giving information. So they'll all say, can you tell me how to get your book? How do I get into your training? And that's what happens because they realize this is real stuff. This stuff works. This stuff makes our positions easier if we understand what's going on. So.
Absolutely. No, that's fascinating stuff. Do you coach people in, you very much, a part of your work is creating and deepening relationships, which is something, thankfully, that has largely been added to the better negotiation approaches in the last 20 years. And something I'm a huge advocate of myself. Do you happen to work with men or women in helping them negotiate or deal with people better in that sort of contract creation sort of way?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's really important. Negotiation isn't just about, a contract. It isn't just about a salary. It's also about how do you get people to, follow you? Because you have to be able to have that. Again, it's all communication, which it really is. The other funny thing is a lot of people will hire me as their sales coach. And it's never, ever, 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 and probably never will be about sales. It isn't, because when you are not comfortable, when you are not sure about, what motivates you, if you're not confident, all of those things, when we talk about that and fix those things, guess what happens to your sales? They skyrocket. And then people say, oh my God, you're the best sales coach ever. It isn't about the sale. The sale is a sale. It's everything leading up to it. It's about investing in your relationships. It's about how do you, get to the point where your clients are giving you referrals without you even having to ask. It's all about those things. It's about being present. When you can figure those things out and get them to work the right way in some process, everything else will be, amazing. And then you're like, oh my God, you're the best sales coach.
So it's all the stuff around it rather than the
Yeah.
selling. Is it when they're in place, then the selling is surprisingly straightforward, or it just happens by itself?
Right, because the secret to selling is to stop selling. Stop selling. Just stop selling. That's it. Stop selling. Let's have a conversation. I have always been the number one salesperson, the number one recruiter, the number one, agency manager. Always. I've always been at the top. If I'm not one, I'm 1, 2, 3. But I've always been at the top. And the point is that I've never sold anything because all I do is have conversations. Always. Always did. I always have conversations. I am known as the question queen. I ask a million questions because I want to get to know you. I really want to understand what makes you tick. Because when you do that and you ask the right kind of questions, they tell you things that you just you would never have heard before, but you have to also listen. Mm-hmm. So, that's the secret.
I have to dig a little deeper on that one. What do you consider the better questions?
So the better questions are the open-ended questions that it's like an oral essay. I will say to you, when I was doing insurance, I would never say, so do you want this policy? How much did you want to spend? Who's the beneficiary? What's the face amount? Did I need to know that? Yeah, but I never asked that. I would say, so Al, tell me, why is it so important that you put this policy in place today? And then I stop talking. And you're going to tell me things. Now, the very first thing I always do is I always say, is it okay if I take notes? Because some people don't want you to take notes, very few, but most people go, sure. And so I take out my pad and I say, so, and then I ask that question and I start writing down what you've told me in your own words, because you have to listen very carefully, and that's how you actively listen. So I'm writing things down, and somewhere in that little oral essay that you just gave me is your why. You have given me the why without saying, okay, here it comes, here's my why. No, it's in that, it's embedded in there. And when I listen carefully, I understand why it's so important that that policy is put in place today. Okay, now going further, a lot of people, whoever's listening that has to, create business for themselves, and it's not necessarily always a sales conversation. There's one question that I absolutely love. And every time I ask it, it brings the relationship to another level. Do you want me to tell you what it is, or should I just leave it hanging?
Please do. You can't tease us. You have to tell us.
And it's funny because, I've asked this of CEOs and they just stop. And the first thing they'll say is, no one's ever asked me that before. And then they start to tell you everything. So my question is, what do you still want to accomplish? And they're like, no one's ever asked me that before. And then they'll tell me things. And I honestly believe they've never told anybody these things before. And then when they're done, they say, well, that was awesome. And then you have another question, like, so how do you see us working together? And they're like, oh my God, I have so many different ways now. That's okay. I didn't sell anything.
I love it. I mean, absolutely. As a coach, it's all about the power of good questions. And then, as you say, actively listening to the response. From the negotiation point of view, it's one of the things in a ton of research. The best negotiators ask more questions, and as you say, better questions. So it's a fabulous piece of advice for anyone listening out there. So tell us, what are some of the red flags that warn you away from certain projects or people? Now, I know there's a lot of things you mentioned with certain attitudinal things where they wouldn't be your client anyway. Right. But if they were actually kind of interested or quite interested in working or talking with you, is there any sort of things that sort of go, oh, red light, maybe not a good idea, maybe they need to change their thinking first? What would be some of those little red flags? Sometimes
it's really the culture. Sometimes you can feel the culture when you walk in, and you can feel the culture when you're on a call, like a Zoom. You could feel it. And I have actually been with somebody that I had to take a step backwards because the energy was like I felt like I was suffocating because it was just.
That sounds unhealthy.
Totally. And I thought, I'm not getting back into this again. So and I would say, I don't think I'm the right person for you, but I probably know others that I can introduce you to, or, whatever. That's always one that's a biggie. But there's another is that people are just talking, but they're not meaning what they're saying. For instance, I spoke in front of 4,000 people, and they were all in financial services, and they were all managers and leaders. And when I was done, I had more people asking me, they wanted to recruit me back into the field. I'm like, nope, been there, done that, not doing that again. But anyway, so there was one guy who said to me, I really need your help. I have no women on my leadership team and I really need your help. And I said, okay, tell me why you want to bring women in. He said, do me a favor. And he threw a number at me. He wanted to put me on retainer and he threw this gigantic number at me. And, as an entrepreneur, like you hear these numbers and you're thinking like, that can't be real, but it was real. Anyway, so he said, do me a favor, go look at our website and tell me what you think and let's talk. And we booked an appointment for the next week. So I go on his website and they've won tons of awards. I mean, like really tons of awards. And I thought, well, this is interesting. And I look at the leadership team and it's 12 men. And the only thing that was different was their tie. Okay. So there's absolutely no diversity of any kind. Okay, so I call him back on our appointment and he said to me, did you look at the website? I said, yes, and congratulations. And I listed off some of the awards that he's won. And he said, oh, you did your homework. And I said, well, that's what I do. And I said, so I want to go back to my question. Why do you want women on your team? And he said, can I be 100% honest with you? And I said, well, if we're going to work together, I would expect that. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's the buzzword. And I said, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? He said, everybody's talking about women. We should have some. So I said to him, okay, so let's pretend we're bringing women in. I said,
like craft beer, I hear there's a new craft beer. We should totally get some in. I hear it's the cool thing.
It's really good. Yeah. So I said to him, okay, so I said to him, so will you be having any kind of training to bring women in? And he said, nope, same training as the men. I said, okay, so when they fail, I didn't say if, when they fail, what are you going to do? He said, well, there's millions out there. You'll just help us get more. So I said to him, I don't really think that I'm the right person because I would never put somebody in a situation where they could not succeed. And he said, oh, interesting. And then he started calling me every name in the book that you could think of, starting with the B word and continuing through the alphabet. Wow. And I said to him, instead of hanging up on him, I said to him, you know what? You just gave me the biggest confirmation that I made the right decision. And I said, so I'm going to hang up now. And I hung up. And I never saw him again. I never looked at him again. I never followed him. Nothing. So those kind of things definitely are red flags right from the beginning. Right. Had I gone into that, I wouldn't have lasted anyway. I would have walked because it's not the right thing. So I try to look at the culture and I try to see if people are serious about what they're doing. And I try to look at their history and see, have they tried it and it didn't work? Are they open to it? Are they, are they coming into it with an open mind, open heart, open values? Because it's a different ballgame. If you're all of one thing and you bring anything in that's different, it's like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. And so how do you incorporate that? So yeah, that was not a good thing.
It sounds like it also comes back, if I'm hearing you correctly, so do correct me if I'm a bit off, but it also comes back, as you said, values, but a big part of that is the why again.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is the why.
Yeah.
The underlying motivator.
When I first started in insurance, I hated it. Like seriously hated it. I wanted to quit 100 times a day because I got no training. It was like, here's a brochure, go do your thing. How many appointments do you have? It was nothing. There was nothing there. And like I said, I was a single mom with kids and I had to do well. And so the first couple of months, it was sheer torture. Every day I would take my kids to school and then I would say to myself, oh my God, I have to drive 2 hours. I don't even know what I'm walking into. I mean, just everything you could think I would say to myself, because you talk to yourself more than anything else, right? Mm-hmm. But when I would get there, I would be fine because I was, serving, supporting, and protecting. One day I looked at my kids before we were leaving for school and I said, I have the two most amazing humans in the entire world. My only job is to protect them. And it was like this neon light in the cartoons popped out saying, you just got it, you just got it. And I thought, well, if I could protect my family, why can't I protect someone else's? So I took them to school. I remember sitting in the parking lot, moving my rearview mirror and saying to myself, today you have the privilege of protecting someone's family. And everything changed. I figured out what my why was, but nobody said anything like, why are you doing this? And from that day on, my business went whoop. I got more referrals than you can possibly imagine. I was like the insurance person of choice for contractors. I mean, just like everything. And it was all because I figured out my why. So go back to what I said before. When you're taking copious notes and you can hear what someone's why is, that their best friend died and didn't have insurance, and now the wife had to go back to work, and they had to sell their house, and they lost everything, and just all of those things. That's the why sometimes. But it could be just because I want to protect my family. It could be anything. But you have to get to that point. And this whole thing about recruiting and retaining and working with people and not, it's all about the why. It always is.
Of course. Particularly, as I said, when there's that subtlety there, the recruitment, which in my brief experience in a lot of this, that some people who are open to it for good reasons are okay at bringing in people and starting to diversify and starting off that inclusion, but are then quite poor at retaining. Is it again related to the why, or is there, I'm sure there's other aspects, principles that come in then, but what is it for you that makes the difference? Is it that they continue the job they started? Is it as simple as that, or?
Now, sometimes it is the why, but sometimes it's because you don't know your people. And if nothing else happens, you should know your people. When I would bring somebody in, I would say to them, tell me 3 things you can expect from me and 3 things I could expect from you. Okay. I always did that because I want to know what be on the same page as them. I don't want to be in a different chapter. I want to be on the same page. And then once they started, even if they sold one thing, it didn't matter. I would say to them, okay, so tell me how you see yourself grow in this company. And they'd say one of 3 things. I want to just stay as a producer. This is all I want to do is just sell, 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 sell. I'm like, great, let me show you how you're going to get there. Or they'd say, I want to go into leadership. And I'd say, great, let me show you how you can get there. Or they'd say, I want your job. I'd say, excellent, let me show you how you can get there. Because that only, if you promote me out of my position, it elevates me, but I'm elevating you. So it's not from the top down, it's the bottom up. So I always knew my people, always. And before I would hire somebody that had a partner, whether it was a husband or a partner or, somebody in their life, I would bring them in as well, because I would never want somebody that didn't have any kind of support. It is not easy when you go into commission-based sales. It's not easy. You have to get it going. And sometimes you don't have that luxury of saying, well, I've got 6 months worth of savings that I could do this. I'd always bring in their partner and I'd say, here's what's going to happen. And you can, if you need me, you call me, because been there, done that, bought the t-shirts many times. And so there would be people that would disqualify themselves right away and say, I can't do it. I'm like, okay, great. Let me help you find another job. Or there'd be people that say, because of you, my husband said I could do this, or because of you, my wife said I could do this. I'm not asking to get permission, but I just want them to know that there's support there. So you have to know your people. If you don't know your people, I don't care where you are in business, you're nowhere.
Mm-hmm. So it is knowing what drives them and where they're heading, their trajectory, absolutely,
Yeah.
and their values, of course. And it's fascinating that you bring in the partner. I've heard of that only really once before with a colleague who ran an international franchise. Mm-hmm. And before he'd sell to a franchisee, they'd always want to meet the partner for exactly the same thing and make sure that they were supporting them, because the amount of stress and the toll and whatnot.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. It was something that I really liked, that you mentioned the phrase, find the helpers. And I'd just love to get another take on what exactly that means to you.
So I remember when Mr. Rogers used to say, when you're in trouble, look for the helpers. And I thought he was talking to me because I am a helper. I like to help people. I like to support people. So when somebody needs something, they're not afraid to call me. If you don't have that kind of relationship, or even the tip of that kind of relationship, no one's going to take you up on it. But I always tell people, I post every single day before 7 a.m. And in the last part of my post, it always says, if you need help, simply ask. And I truly mean that. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to spend 85 hours with you. But if you have a question, I'm going to answer it for you. I've done a lot of different things in my life. I have lots of experience. I know lots of people. So why wouldn't I help you? Because, that's part of my value system. So, I always listen to Mr. Rogers, and so I'm a helper.
I don't think he's as well known internationally outside
I'm
the
sure
US.
not. I'm
A lot
sure.
of people know him from the Tom Hanks movie recently, a
Yes,
few years
yes,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah,
I know of original Mr.
the
Rogers.
original, the original, exactly. So, just in that spirit of helping, if people are listening to this and they're interested in what you do, what is one valuable free resource that you could potentially direct them to that would help them with that?
Oh my goodness, just go to my website. There's tons of free, just if you need some, if you want a mini guide, you can go to, my website is sellinginskirt.com/special dash offer. It's a free download. It's a mini guide of all different things about sales and, women in sales and what to look for and, how men and women work. So, I mean, yeah, but there's tons of stuff that you can download, you can look at. There's videos, there's interviews, there's all kinds of good stuff there. So yeah.
There is a wealth of goodies. I did have a look there. There's a lot of good stuff on there. So people should really check that out. It will, of course, be beneath the podcast and the video. Just what question should I have asked you that I didn't? Can be a tough question, though.
What's next for me?
Yeah, what is next for you? What's on the horizon for you?
I do believe that there are some programs that are going to be coming out that have to do with leadership. Right now, we do have a sales program that's out. It's called Skirt Strategy, which is amazing. Everything I do is around skirt because my business is selling in a skirt. So I keep the branding all the way through. And it's so people know when they see skirt, they think of Judy Hoberman. So there is a sales program out. It's skirtstrategywebinar.com. And that's pretty awesome. It's written by women. It was originally for women, but we had a lot of men that went through it, so it's okay. But yeah, I mean, I don't eliminate anybody. I just encourage people to show up where they should show up. And if I do believe I can't help them, I will encourage them to go elsewhere. And I have resources elsewhere. But so that's what's up for me. There's skirtstrategywebinar.com, and then there's leadership coming.
Fabulous stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll pause it there for the minute, Judy. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you. Cheers.